Hello. Well, the characters in the play that are portrayed by puppets and masks really fall into three different categories. There is the biggest chunk is what I would call the story within the story, which is the story that comes out of Jimmy's book. It's the story of Otto and Anka and Mirka, and they're told all using kind of the world of paper, which is the world of Jimmy's book. They're mostly masked characters, although there are a couple of puppets in there too, and some bigger backpack puppets which represent soldiers. The second puppet world is really the things that we see with our eyes in the real world. So the sparrow is a puppet, it's a wooden puppet, and the duck, which is a really important character, it's a rubber duck that comes to life. And it needs to look like a real world rubber duck, but also have the magical ability to speak and be cheeky. And the third there's really only one puppet that falls into this category, is kind of like dream world. And a lot of that is really told through animation, but there's one puppet, which is Eli's whale, that after Eli is killed, he comes back in sort of as a vision to Subi, and the whale is a figure that comes out of Eli's story, and we show that with a big silk windsock puppet. Well, the choice of why to use puppets is a really interesting one. In a lot of productions, people might just use a puppet because they need an animal or a child or something that they don't have an actor to show. It's actually about the worst reason, I would say, to use puppets. I think puppets can bring another layer to the storytelling, and it might be that magical world that's slightly different to our everyday world. They exist sort of on the layer of metaphor, really, quite often, or a bit like a poem would. And within this story, they identify the story within the story. So they're telling us very clearly, visually, this is not the world that happens within the camp. This is not the characters of the camp. These are characters from a fictional meta story is from a different world, and so it's a different physical world as well as a different story world. So the process that I would usually follow with designing puppets and masks is I would consult with the overall show director and designer about what the function of those puppets and masks are in the piece. And then we quite often will have an R&D, sort of a playing session with existing pieces. So we might just play and see how masks might function or a puppet might function, that even if it's not the right one, just to have a play with it and see what feels like it works. And then I'll go away and do some drawings and really start to play in clay. So when I'm making a mask, I start with clay usually. So big chunk of clay. And I will do a lot of the design work for that character in the clay. So I may make 3 or 4 iterations of a character when I'm trying to really get to what that character looks like. And then from there, with this piece, I sent lots and lots of photos across and said, does this feel like we're getting towards the right character? And we had lots of conversations. And then from there, I turn the clay mold into a paper mask. And then once it's completely dry, then I paint it and take it off the clay. And then the final stage is just see what happens when a performer wears it. That's the really exciting moment. In the Bone Sparrow, there are puppets and masks that are manipulated in lots of different ways. The masks are full head we would call them helmet masks. So the performers really only have very limited vision and they can't hear very well. So it means that their expression, rather than with a regular stage actor, is not in their face and it's not in their voice. Instead, it's in gestures. So it's in what they're doing with their hands, how they hold the rest of their body, states of tension, and especially in the music. That's how we understand a lot of what's happening with that character. The puppets are, as I say, manipulated in lots of different ways. Some of the more distinctive ones are probably the soldiers in the Otto and Anka story. They're backpack puppets, which means that they wear a harness like a rucksack. And then the head of the puppet is way above the performer's head, and they control the head movement with a control bar in front of them. So the way they move that makes the head move. But they really have to be aware of where the gaze of that puppet is, and the fact that although they're visible, but we really want the focus to be on the head of the puppet and on what the puppet itself is doing. So it's about them becoming part of the whole image rather than being the image, which is what an actor might usually try and do. Then there are lots of other puppets. So the Sparrow is a little wooden puppet. It has a little control on the rod, which allows you to operate its head, and a little wing flap. And the ducks, there are a variety of different ducks in the piece, all controlled in different ways. So if people wanted to incorporate elements of puppetry in their own work, I would say maybe the least important thing is to make a fully realized puppet, actually. Anything can be a puppet. Materials, I would say some of the more exciting puppetry work can be quite abstract, and it might be trying to represent a moment that's not necessarily a character, but is an energy or a feeling, something like that. Just playing with materials is really wonderful. See what a piece of paper can do if it's moved. See what a piece of paper can do if you have multiple performers playing with it. See what a piece of fabric can do. I think that some of them, I think that there's a lot of interesting work that can be done that's not in the figurative realm. And I think that's where the exciting work will come in the future of theatre, is people really pushing that idea of what can be represented on stage.